Hello, thank you for joining me. Today we are going to be talking about the energy, the energy which is in our body. And as we continue to talk about the health message and healing, as well as the body temple, based on the message which was written in the book, The Body Temple by Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McEndry. Energy is really good to know because energy is part of living. We know that when living matter is existing, there is a lot of transfer of energy as well as loss of energy and gaining energy. So, at the foundation of health and wellness and well being is understanding energy and where energy comes from and what is the source of energy. So I like the fact that Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McEndry in their book, The Body Temple, they talk about a verse, First Chronicles 29, verse 11, which reads, Thine, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, for all that is in heaven and in earth is thine. Thine is the kingdom, O Lord, and thou art exalted as above all. So this ties in very well with the message which we find in the Sabbath school lesson, which we are reading now, to do with the fall of mankind and also to do with creation. So God is the source of all energy and power. Without this energy, we will cease to exist. So physical chemistry must therefore be concerned about both matter and energy. So you realize that based on energy, diagnostic tests are carried out to determine what is going on in the body, the human body in terms of disease processes. Part of that is coming from the fact that we know that the human body is challenged when we see certain chemicals and elements present when certain labs are done. And you also must be thinking, okay, is that what happens when you get an MRI or an X-ray done, or you get a PET scan done or a CAT scan done? Is that what happens? Are they looking for the energy and the consistency in the tissue and so forth and so forth? The answer is yes. So therefore, when matter, which is also the human body, which is based on what we talked about, the systems of the body and the organs and the cells, which we're talking about, when there is disease in the body, it means therefore that there's a change in the consistency of the cells. So this is very, very important. Most people take it for granted that the structural organism of the human being has different levels. And these levels define whether we live or die based on the nature of the tissue, the cells, the organs, and the systems. So the reason why I want to talk about this so much is because most people would get a copy of their X-ray results or their labs, and they're not able to make sense of what that really means. What that means is those labs are indicating what has gone wrong. So what actually has gone wrong in the body is diseased. So in order to understand the health message in its entirety, we need to get down to this energy factor. So this energy is what brings life or death. The lack of it brings death. More of it sometimes causes other problems in terms of diseases we see today. So therefore, energy, what is it? What is energy? Unlike matter, energy does not have properties. that we can easily use, like color, smell, or other terms like volume and quantity and weight. It's something we don't do every day. We don't take energy and measure it. However, energy is possessed by the body, the human body. The body has the ability to change the position or arrangement of certain matter, and that is the ability to work. So work is when we move. And when we move, even just moving a little bit, there's a lot going on inside the body. So work is done by energy. And this is transfers from the object doing the work to the object being moved, and whether this is the reference of a very small scale molecules or large scale of the universe, but energy is a fact. I like the verse Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry quoted here, which is the book of Psalms, Psalms 33, verses 6 to 8. And this passage reads, by the word of God, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all that was in the storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. Psalms 33, verses 6 to 8. So why is this relevant? It's relevant because understanding energy gives us a better understanding of what is going on in the body. So we will look at these levels briefly. For those of you who are joining us live, please put your questions in the chat box. And if you're watching this video after it's been broadcast, please also put your comments in the chat box, in the comments section. So this is what's going on. Balance. Balance is key. When the body has balance at cellular level, it means that the cells are healthy and functioning. And these cells are crying out for minerals, vitamins, water, and they are also trying to eliminate the toxins, the poisons, or the byproduct of metabolism, which are really, honestly, waste. That's what waste is. And so when you think about it, is that at this cellular level, there is a lot of things going on. And what drives these things is energy. And so you might be asking yourself a question. So what does this all have to do with disease processes? What does this have to do with my health? What does that have to do with the choices I make every day? This is the matter here. When the body is deprived of the minerals, the oxygen, the vitamins, the water it needs, when the little cells are bombarded with the toxins, or they're starving for water, for minerals, for vitamins, and for the right amount of nutrients, the tissues begin to die. One at a time, a little bit at a time. Not all tissues die, by the way. Some tissues, some cells change their form. And so when you read closely the causes of cancer and why things are happening at the pace they're happening in terms of diseases, you realize that it is the absence of nutrients, water, oxygen, and minerals and vitamins, and the excess of toxins in the cells, which leads to the cells changing their form. I was reading an article a while back, which talked about how by the year 2030, we are going to have more cancer situations in this world than we have today. And I want to agree with that, because as I speak to you, I've seen a lot of people who talk about cancer. And cancer is really a problem associated with the body failing to fight, the body failing to defend itself from toxins, the body failing to defend itself from unhealthy conditions around the cell itself. So why is this important? Because when cells are not normal, the energy is not normal. We know this because when a person gets an MRI or PET scan a test done, that is what the tests are looking for. The consistency in the cell tissue density, the presence or absence of water, the normalcy of the cells. So energy is needed. So I'm not here to teach a pathology class, but my intention sharing this video is to bring to your understanding that the importance of energy is going to help you understand what your body is going through. So here's an example of energy. Suppose you allow an ice cube to melt in your hand. Take an ice cube, put it in your hand, and let it melt. What do you get at the end? Water. As ice begins to melt, most of your hand will become cold, and you start experiencing cold sensation in your hand. And eventually, if you continue to hold that ice, that water is going to get warm because energy is going to be transferred from your body into the ice cube or the water, and the water warms up. So literally, the body is striving to maintain balance, to maintain a state of balance in terms of energy constantly. And the body also is converting the food we eat into energy, which can be used for function, or into elements which can be stored in the body. Yes, and that's why it's important to understand this. So there is both situations of a single occurrence as well as multiple events happening after the first event happens. For instance, with the ice cube, if the ice cube is still cold, obviously you're going to feel cold. When the ice cube turns into water, the water is still going to be cold, but at some point that water is going to get warm. And if you were to hold it a little longer, it's no longer warm, it's probably just neutral because your skin will have absorbed the coldness from your hand, and your hand now is just cool. So that's what happens. So it's every single cellular level that is happening. Energy is generated, created, utilized, absorbed, and so forth. So what is the significance of this? The significance is that energy is absorbed and molecules are moved. So the removal of heat and cold, it takes elements moving, changing form. Yes, so the human body, when exposed to certain things, it does change. We know this because if you read and read and read, you will come across a lot of terms which sound like neurotoxins, carcinogenic. That means in simple language that these are things which cause the body's nervous system to be damaged. Neurotoxin, a toxin which damages the nerve tissue is called a neurotoxin. Carcinogenic. Carcinogenic is a word which means it causes cancer. Yes. So I wanted to talk about this energy piece because when we begin to understand that we are all energy and that our cells, in most cases, they are kind of vacuum. They only have certain components in them. So you picture this. You've got a balloon. You take a balloon which is flat and you blow it up with air. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes it explodes right in your face. So this is what happens when cells are filled and filled and filled Some do explode. Yes. So if the explosion is happening at this local cellular level, the damage might be very little. But if the explosion is happening with massive, massive cells, then the damage would be much more. So when we talk about energy, we are not just talking about stored energy. We are also talking about generated energy, and also energy which can be beneficial and energy which can be detrimental to the human body's health. So there are many books which have been written which points us to this direction, that even when energy is absorbed and the molecules are moved around, this causes changes. Just like with the ice cube in your hand, it's going to make your hand cold. Yes. And if that was not an ice cube, if that was a hot iron, it burns. So it's going to cause some cell damage. So you're thinking, oh, okay. So what's the relevance? The relevance is this. If therefore the body is subjected to trauma, spiritual trauma, emotional trauma, physical trauma, chemical trauma, any psychological trauma, it's affecting the cells. Yes. So therefore, as I shared this with you, I want you to think about what are some of the energy suckers, the energy destroyers from your cells. So let's move on to talk about how energy can either be moved from one form or the other, or it can be stored. So our bodies are equipped with the mechanisms to allow no more energy flows. In other words, no more energy flows are associated with the human body, the way it's created. However, there are also some energy blockers. Some energy blockers which results in problems we see today. So going back to the slide, which I was sharing with you, which is right here. If we go back to this slide, we'll see that the energy at cellular level is based on the presence of oxygen. Why is oxygen important? Oxygen is needed for life. Therefore, if oxygen is not present, cells die. We know this. In medical terms, they call it tissue necrosis or cell necrosis. So, as I mentioned before, some things are lost in translation. Why is this important? It's important because most people don't understand why, when they are not feeling well, they have to have lab work. You have to have lab work because lab work is what's giving us skills and knowledge to know what's wrong with you. Yes. So therefore, it's important to know every day, what do these little cells need and how can these cells help us to generate life instead of death? And what do these cells need, in other words? So I like the fact that you're all joining me from all different four corners of the world, and that also, as we are sharing this, you're beginning to think, okay, so how can I make sure that my body has the right energy? So as I share with this with you on this Sabbath day, I want to encourage most of you to take a break and rest. Rest restores things at cellular level, but too much rest is also not good, because we need to be able to generate sufficient movement in our body in order for oxygen, minerals, vitamins, and water to circulate. So when you sit for too long, it affects your well-being. So I wanted to make reference to the book, back to the book by Dr. Dwayne and Dr. Nancy McEndry. When they talk about energy, the law of conservation of energy states that although energy cannot be transformed from one, although energy can be transformed from one place to another, it can change form. It can either be created or destroyed in the process. In the process, then, from a melting of the ice cube to a nuclear explosion, it is possible to account for all the energy involved in it. Consider both the law of conservation of energy, that's conserving, keeping energy, and the law of conservation of mass. It is apparent that with ordinary chemicals and physical changes, neither mass nor energy is created or destroyed, even though either may change form. Aha! So this explains a lot of how we have so many different diseases which the body suffers from, because most of the time, at tissue or cellular level, there's a lot more going on, which is why when a person has cancer, they have to do a biopsy. They have to take some cells and see what is going on, to see the nature of the cells, because without doing a biopsy, you don't know what nature the cells are in. It is important, therefore, it's a fundamental rule of nature, which we should know, that we cannot use heat with 100% efficiency. Only a fractions of energy are consumed, ever grow, even in most of what we do. One base heat engine operates at 40% efficiency. This means that 60% of the energy is transferred to the environment when only 40% is used. In other words, they're saying it is a rule of nature that we cannot use heat 100%. We lose heat even when we're trying to cook something. It's not being used, it's going to the environment. And I like this because it is when I was reviewing this content, which I realized that, okay, when we speak of energy, we need to speak of work. Yes, and if you know kinematics or kinesiology or any movement books or theories which have been written, you realize that work is when we use energy, because this is when we start utilizing what is stored for motion and function. This is very important. So we can recognize that work is being done if we see something move. Yes. So at every single level, there's movement. This explains why when you have swelling, you lose function. Yes, because when things are swollen, there is no movement or fluid in the tissue. So I like what the authors of this book says. Work is also done by our bodies molecularly, like at the little molecule level, there's work going on, there's movement going on. So therefore, when we work biologically, we consume energy, just like any other work. So the biology, the physiology of this body, the mechanics of this body is that when things are happening at cellular level, then there is work. So often, when people say we are fearfully and wonderfully made, they are overlooking the fact that we have this smallest organism level where things are happening. These large molecules also in the cells are responsible. So often when, for instance, if food is eaten, when you eat food, the food is fuel, which is transported across the digestive system. And inside the membranes of the digestive system, it's absorbed. And this results in energy coming from food. This also process requires the use of energy. So you're thinking, okay, so the use to create energy uses energy. Yes, it does. And so energy is used to transport things, to move things along, to move things along the grain or against the grain. So therefore, there's two sides to this. There's the directional flow, and there's that energy which is opposing the flow. And it's the reality, because when you look at the human cell, you realize that these are large molecules of protein, which are also used to generate growth, as well as to synthesize and produce other small molecules. And this is a biosynthesis which requires work and energy. And so these forms of energy, though energy cannot be destroyed or created, because Einstein told us that, it can change, or Newton told us that, it can change from one form to the other. So for instance, a light bulb burns, electric energy converted into heat. Since we use energy in all forms, it should be useful to briefly describe some of them. So we have energy in heat, and you're thinking, oh, is this energy in heat also present in our body? Yes. That's why when a person is sick, they have a fever, because at cellular level, they probably has an infection. At tissue level, there are many cells involved with this infection. At organ level, now there's swelling and heat. And then at body system level, there's a disease process. So heat is obtained from burning fuel and also from the sun. Most energy is ultimately lost in the environment as heat. Heat is used in the motion of atoms and molecules of matter. So it is heat which generates movement. So we know that heat is coming from burning fuel. So therefore, understanding that heat is coming from burning fuel will help us understand better what kind of fuel does the body need to generate the right energy and sustain life. And this is where the health message now brings the details of making decisions based on knowing what's happening at the cell. Then the next energy we've talked about heat, is mechanical energy. This is the energy which is the efficient energy which allows movement to take place. So mechanical, we've talked about heat energy obtained from burning something, from fuel. We'll come back to it as we continue to look at the health message. Now we're talking about mechanical energy. Mechanical energy is that energy which produces motion, movement. And it's, for instance, if you move your arm, you move your leg, that is mechanical energy. A car has mechanical energy. It can move from one place to the other. When you push something, it's mechanical energy. Is mechanical energy available in our body? The answer is yes. It is mechanical energy which helps us to move things around in the body. The heart pushes blood through the arteries. It's mechanical energy. And also the bowels. When you are going to use the bathroom, you push things out through your intestines, through your colon and out through the anus to use the bathroom. That is energy. And then chemical energy. Chemical is used by compounds when certain kinds of arrangements of atoms are found in molecules. Upon reaction, some of this energy can be released. If the product of the reaction possesses less amount of energy, then other particles are produced. So in other words, this chemical energy is the very chemical energy which is influenced by most drugs. Most medications will have a chemical reaction when they enter the body. So we are fearfully and wonderfully made because the chemical energy exists in the body even without putting medication in it. When, for instance, you consume your food, digestion takes place through enzymes, which are chemicals, through acid, which is present in the stomach, which is a chemical. So we will talk about chemical energy as we go along this series. Then we will now touch on light energy. Light energy is really electromagnetic energy. which can be thought as energy traveling as waves through a space at the speed of maybe like 186,000 miles per second. We commonly call this the speed of light. So yes, our bodies have light energy or electromagnetic energy. This is very relevant because as we talk about some of the diseases the body suffers from, you realize that there is an element of overlooking certain energies like electromagnetic energy. Most people, you hear them likely say, oh, microwaves are not good. You can't use a microwave. They are on the right track because electromagnetic energy in the body is interfered with by certain things, because the natural electromagnetic energy is present in our bodies. Yes, right now I can look at my screen or you can see me because there's light energy being transmitted from the screen to your eyes, and your eyes is interpreting this energy and converting it into a signal which goes to your brain, and your brain understands what I'm saying. So this is what we're talking about. Then we need to talk about another energy, which is electrical energy. Electrical energy is generated by friction. This energy is also used by motion of electrical conduction, which is used by specific material in the human body. Material that is has sometimes magnetic fields or certain chemical reactions will generate electrical energy. So you're thinking, okay, so does the human body have electricity? And the answer is yes. So when we say we are fearfully and wonderfully made, we are also saying that at chemical level, right at the cellular level, there's electricity. At tissue level, there's electricity. At movement with the hormones, the enzymes, and the neurotransmitters, both at cellular, tissue, organ, system, body level, there is electricity. And at organ level, there is electricity. So I wanted to just use this slide so you can always remember that with everything I am going to share with you, it's happening at every level. However, if these things are happening at cellular level, it might boil down to, does the cell have balance? Is the cell getting enough oxygen? Is the cell getting enough minerals? Is the cell getting enough water? And is the cell getting rid of the toxins? Yes. And so that's why I'm using this slide here, so you can just continue to see that it is important that you understand these things in your own way so that you can better understand what it means to be fearfully and wonderfully made. Because when you are fearfully and wonderfully made, you have all these body parts working in you. You also have all these things, these energies traveling through you, in you, or you are causing this energy to change one way or the other. So I like sharing this with you, and please feel free, ask me questions. Type in the chat box the questions you have for me, as well as how best you can understand the health message. Because the health message, what it is that it is a message which is grounded in the way our bodies are made. So by saying, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, I am saying that I understand the energy which goes on into my body, in my body. And so by saying I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, I am acknowledging that God created in me, within me, all these organs, which I have a responsibility to care for them. So I want to continue to share this with you as you type in your questions in the chat box, please be aware that this is not about me. It's about me sharing how all this transfers into their Sabbath worship and worshiping God, and understanding that being fearfully and wonderfully made literally means that your body has cells, as tiny little particles which are alive and not dead. Though they die slowly, some of them live until a person is dead, then life is no more. Then other organisms start living in that human body. But those organisms are also present as life prevails. So as I talk about how all this is going to translate into what responsibilities we have, what responsibility do I have, therefore, today to my body, is I acknowledge that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. You have a responsibility to know what's going on in your body. You also have a responsibility to know what can you do to help your body heal. So I like to share this message on the Sabbath because there's many people who are watching who are passionate about their health, who always ask the question, how does this translate to the health message? And this is what I am going to say. When you are fearfully and wonderfully made, it means that right at the cellular level, at the smallest part of you, there has to be balance. And creating this balance, most of you have heard people who have said time and time again that to create balance, you ought to have a certain part of you aligned. So for most people, creating balance means you have to reset. So on a Sabbath like this, most people reset by taking a rest. Literally, taking a rest gives your cells the ability to recover from trauma, the trauma of life. And so when you talk about the trauma of life, most people question and say, so what do you mean, Dr. Stella? Well, the trauma of life is associated with life's experiences. So even being born, the birth process is trauma. The body suffers trauma from physical, chemical, mechanical, electrical. So at this cellular level of the human body, things are happening. So energy is important. It's important because energy is generated, energy is used, energy is preserved, and energy is also abused, in other words. So when trauma happens, for instance, you've heard a lot of neuroscientists talking about how spiritual people who have a religion or a belief overcome certain adversities. Yes, because restoration in the body is based on some of the choices we make. It's also based on what our body experiences, which in most cases, it might not be our choice, but it's our environment. So the health message, which I bring to you today, is that energy is important. And energy is in 5 major forms. So for those of you who just joined us, I just shared that energy is heat energy. When you light a fire, it gets hot. When you boil water, it starts boiling and evaporates. So energy is heat. Yes, the body has heat. Energy is mechanical, moves things around. And machines move things around. In our body, we have mechanical energy. Energy is electrical. when you slide on a switch, the light bulb goes on. In our body, we have electricity. Yes, that's how the brain works. That's how we feel, move, hear, see, laugh, chew, because electricity is running up and down. In our bodies, there is chemical energy. Yes, chemicals like bleach do cause pain, but in the body, they are naturally occurring chemicals. And so I'm sharing this with you because you need to understand how the health message and spiritual inclinations connect in restoring health. Then the other energy is light, also electromagnetic energy, which moves fast, like the speed of light. Yes, so by you viewing this video, hearing what I'm saying, electromagnetic energy is part of this process, going through the mic, through electrical signals, decoded into sound. So that's how complex we are. So when you say you are fearfully and wonderfully made, it means you have tiny, tiny little particles in your body known as cells, which respond to heat energy, to mechanical energy, to electrical energy, to chemical energy, to light or electromagnetic energy. So therefore, you have a responsibility when you know these things to accept that in life, as we live today, we operate every day with a combination of these energies. They don't exist in isolation. No, they don't. Because if they did or functioned independently, we would not be alive. And I'll explain this. So how fearfully, wonderfully made are you? You're so fearfully, wonderfully made that when you have a fever in your body, the heart starts beat faster. Your heart rate will go up because the heart receives signals from the brain. The brain senses there's a fever, and then the heart beats faster to circulate the blood fast so that the cooling effect can take place as you breathe in and out. Clean air going in, stale air going out. So therefore, it's a combination of mechanical, heat, electrical, as well as chemical going on. So the health message, therefore, is to understand that we are so complex and so beautifully, fearfully, wonderfully made in that we actually are a combination of these energies happening at the same time. So I like the fact that most people who watch my videos are believers like me, believe in God, and are seeking for ways to understand the health message. Therefore, I want to share a quote, one of my favorite authors. This author, for those of you who don't know this author, her name is Ellen G. White. She existed in the 1800s. She wrote so many books that her books are translated and are even in the Library of Congress here in the US. Ellen G. White is one of the most translated authors in the world. She wrote with brilliance. She wrote with wisdom, with intelligence, with inspiration in a way that what she spoke about, we are seeing today in terms of disease processes. So here is the quote. The quote is found in her book, Counsels on Education. And I'm going to read this for you. Intemperance in eating and drinking, intemperance in labor, intemperance in almost everything, exists on every hand. Those who make great exertions to accomplish just so much work in a given time and continue to labor when their judgment tells them that they should rest, are never gainers. In other words, people who work and work and work and work and never rest, they end up losing their health. And we've seen this and we've known this. Scientists have proved this time and time again that when any tissue in the body is stretched and strained, it breaks, it ruptures, it gets sick, it gets diseases. Stress does the same thing. So let's go back to our author, Ellen G. White. She then writes this: these people who labor with intemperance, who eat and drink with intemperance, who do almost everything to extremes, they are going to lose, especially if they don't rest. They are living on borrowed capital. They are expending the vital force which they will need in future times. And when the energy they have so recklessly used is demanded, they fail for want of it. In other words, when the opportunity is there for healing to take place, the body doesn't have the right energy to heal. Yes, let's keep on reading. Their physical strength is gone. The mental powers fail. They realize that they have met with a loss, but they do not know what it is. Their time of need has come, but their physical resources are exhausted. Everyone who violates the laws of health must sometime be a sufferer to a greater or lesser degree. God has provided us with a continuous force, which we will need, which will be needed at different periods of our lives. If we recklessly exhaust this force by continuously overtaxing, we shall sometime be losers. Our usefulness will be lessened. And if not, our life is destroyed. Ellen G. White, Counsels on Education, page 166. This is where the rubber meets the road. It goes back, therefore, to what I shared earlier, that we know, and science has taught us, we have cells in our bodies which are tiny living components of you and me. And for those of us who know where these cells come from, we know how the Creator made us and what the Creator said we ought to do. So the body temple is giving us these messages in a way that we can understand a little more of what we need to know. So what Ellen G. White wrote in this book is so profound that you realize that when she said intemperance in eating or drinking, she meant gluttony, overeating, over drinking. When she said intemperance in labor, she meant laboring and not resting enough. When she said intemperance in almost everything, she meant that sometimes when you have a challenge in one department, it flows into the other department. It's evident. When I have overeaten, I have to come up with a way of coping with that. And so you realize that our lifestyles are connected with some of these things she talked about here. So the health message, therefore, is about connecting the dots with where we are now and where we've been as a world. If you read very closely the publications which talk about chronic diseases, for instance, you realize that they are saying we are going to have more diseases than we ever anticipated. And part of it is because when the pandemic came, we slowed down. With the pandemic, we have more stress. With the pandemic, we have more problems. And so we realize that with what we are going through as a people, as a nation, we are there now where we are saying, what can we do? So we've shared this verse before, Genesis 3, verse 19. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat thy bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it was thou taken. From the dust thou shalt return. Genesis 3, verse 19. I want us to just consider energy. Energy can be restored when we worship, can be restored when we take a rest, can be restored when we offer a kind deed to someone. It can be restored when we do our best and allow God to do the rest. So I like what Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry wrote in their book. They wrote this: when mineral energy is lost out of our basic molecular structure of the human body, the line of resistance, which is the vital force, will be altered at that point. And yes, science has told us this as well. When you put a lot of strain on any tissue or any structure, it eventually ruptures. So I agree with Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry here. They say this in turn alters the electrical flow. When the electrical flow is altered, the magnetism will also be altered. High level wellness is reduced, and the person will be subject to greater and greater number of diseases. That's why stress is a factor. That's why the Bible says, be anxious for nothing, but with prayer and supplication give thanks. I like what they wrote in their book. They further wrote this statement: we cannot receive energy from dead food. This is why God gave us the diet that will be most beneficial to us in Genesis 1, verse 29. And I'll read it for you. Genesis 1, verse 29 reads, and God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing tree. Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be your meat. Food prepared in the most simple manner and preserving its natural properties as much as possible, and avoiding flesh meats and grease and all spices is the best food to promote wellness. Written by Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry in their book, The Body Temple. So this is so beautiful that I want to stop sharing this, but I know you're listening and watching live. I'll continue until the hour. We have 30 more minutes. This is so beautiful. We cannot receive energy from dead food. Is that ringing a bell? Why? Because we are living and we're not dead until we die. So we don't want to be dead until we are dead. You don't want to die until we're dead. So we try to live and we try to do our best. So therefore, this is beautiful. As we continue to share this, I want you to just think, what are some of the things you can start doing You can start doing now, or you can continue to follow this channel and learn a little more about the body temple, because your body is the temple. It's the temple of the living God. It's the temple which houses all the living tissue and the organs and the systems which keep you alive. And my body is exactly that. So I like what they wrote in their book. Is I share with you messages from the body temple. I want you to take note of this. In the digestion of live foods, onions, and cat ions work and rub against each other, causing resistance. When this happens, energy is given off as a result of this resistance. The energy given off from the digestion is what the human lives on. Aha! He does not live off the food he eats, but rather he lives off the energy which comes off the cat ions of the food in the resistance by the anions and the digestive enzymes. So tell me the science here. The science of being fearfully and wonderfully made, grounded in the fact that we have heat energy, chemical energy, mechanical energy, electrical energy, as well as light energy, which is electromagnetic field. This is the health message, everyone, is understanding who we are, how fearfully and wonderfully made we are. So let's move on regarding energy. We receive our energy from two sources. Two sources we receive our energy. And from these two sources is connected life. Two sources. You want to hear this? Let's go on. We receive our energy. First, we receive energy from the food digestive principles. And secondly, from the atmosphere where we live and breathe. So you're thinking, so we have energy coming from the internal, and we also have energy from the external. The answer is yes. So being fearfully and wonderfully made means that we have a connection with the environment which God created, the air, the sun, the light. And so the health message is acknowledging these two energy sources as facts, because they are facts. And so you're wondering, okay, so what does that translate to? It translates to the fact that, you ready for this? It translates to the fact that when you digest food, you get energy from food. When you breathe air, you get energy from air. When the sun is hot, you get energy from the sun. It gets a little complex, but it is my hope that through this channel, you stay with me. So you make decisions to say, do I embrace the health message, or do I throw it out through the window, depending on where you stay with the information I'm sharing here, So here we go. Let's move on. So approximately 20% of the mineral energy comes from the food. I love when Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry brought this to light, that 20% of our energy comes from food and 80% from the atmosphere. I know what some people are thinking. They studied the book of Genesis last week, Sabbath school lesson right there. It talked about three things, three gifts from God. That's what it talked about. It says food, the woman, and the environment. It was in the Sabbath school lesson. And I was so delighted to see that. I'm like, okay, perfect. So here is what Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry wrote in their book. Approximately 20%, which means 2 out of 10 of the energy comes from food. 80%, 8 out of 10 comes from the atmosphere. So it's energy we need, energy we use, and energy we thrive for. So the health message is about understanding that, and then you make decision according to your understanding of what it is, being fearfully and wonderfully made. So as we move forward, I'm going to say this. Dr. Dwayne and Nancy McHenry wrote this. I did not write this. The more efficient the digestive process, the more efficient the body is in extracting minerals from the air. Aha! I was like, "Ooh, that's the science? You mean to tell me if my digestive system is efficient, then I am able to extract more energy from the air, from the environment?" The answer is yes, because we cannot live without air. We cannot live without the atmosphere, the environment we live in. Aha. So most people who are Bible scholars and most people who are well read, and taught, they're thinking, "Oh, so Dr. Stella, you're making the health message simple." Yes, I am. Because I believe when Ellen G. White wrote that the physiology of the body should be the first lesson to any child's life, I agree. Because my relationship with understanding disease processes, I'll share with you. I was with the germs out of England, and I was doing a session when I asked the kids. I was asked to speak to the the young children, about how I became a doctor. I'm board certified alternative practitioner, and what drove me. The kids wanted to know so badly, what made you become a doctor? And they asked that question. And I was invited to talk about biology and, and the human body, but they didn't want to know that. They wanted to know what was the driving factor. And I was able to share with them this. Growing up in Africa, as some of you know, they usually shave the hair off the girls' heads as well as they do the boys. So I noticed something, and this is what I shared with the kids. I noticed something. Every time they shave my hair, it grows. So I was sharing with the kids. I said, I became a doctor because I got curious. I got curious in wanting to know, why is my hair growing all the time, every time they cut it? So at a very young age, I became curious. Why does this hair keep coming out? Then I thought, well, perhaps there is something which pushes it out. So it's coming out because it's being pushed out by something. And so it was in this curiosity now when I began to really realize that, there is a higher power. So I came to the message, the Advent message, because God called me to the Advent message. I did not come to the Adventist message because my mother dragged me to church or forced me to read my Sabbath school lesson. No, I got enlightenment from God himself. So it was in my curiosity now regarding this hair growth that I discovered that there's more to it than my hair being cut every so often. Because this hair keep growing. Something makes it grow. So I became a health care practitioner and a person who's passionate about your health because I became curious. And you're thinking, so it is curiosity which drives science? Yes. Scientists are curious to find answers. That's why we research on people every day. We have more money spent in research today than we had 30 years ago. So I became curious, and this was about 50 years ago, because I was 2 years old, 52 years ago. I'm going to be 53 this year. So when I became curious, I said, well, there must be a power which drives things around. There must be power which makes my hair grow. So I became converted at a very young age to believe in God, because that power, I did not see it. I did not hear it. I did not touch it, but it made my hair grow every time my hair got shaved off my head. So it is when I began curious to try and understand. So therefore, what is the message which I need to know, which need to stay with me, for me to acknowledge the science. I didn't even know what science was, which makes my hair grow every time they shave it. That part which makes me, even when I cry, don't cut my hair, I'll be quiet, I'll get over it at some point, and the hair comes back and they cut it anyhow. And so growing up with this short hair, which I didn't even want, I want my hair to grow because it's nice and bushy and thick. As you can see, I still have it. Most women are bald, most men are bald. At 52, I still carry my hair. So I wanted to know, how do I even cope when I lose my hair? And I just managed to manage, even though it bothered me. What makes me accept it? So I became curious. So it is in my curiosity that I became an Seventh-day Adventist at the tender age of 7. I went to church with neighbors. I did not go with my parents because my parents were not Adventists. And then I heard them sing these songs, which then created more curiosity in me. And as I listened to these songs, I then was reminded that there's a higher power, which makes me cope when my hair is cut, which makes me not to bleed when my hair is cut, but I bleed when my skin is cut. So I became very curious. So it is this passion and this curiosity which I grew up with, which makes me a health advocate and a wellness advocate, which makes me thrive for my well-being, to live the best life I can, no matter how, no matter who, no matter when. It is this curiosity which makes me a Seventh-day Adventist believer, because God showed me. So as I grew up, therefore, by the age of 10, I knew I was going to be in the medical field. I didn't have to be told that I was going to be. I knew, because I was still curious. And for those of you who might not know this, in other parts of the world, you probably don't get to see a doctor unless something breaks, your body part breaks or something, or ruptures. And that was me. So I'm walking with my mother one day, and I tell you my story so you can understand that it is God who heals you. It is God who heals your emotions. It is God who heals your pain, your wounds. God is a healer. It is God who inspires physicians to do the fine work of surgery they do every day. If you were to talk to those surgeons, you realize that they are believers in God. So I share this with a passion. So picture this. I'm 7, 8 years old, and I'm traveling, walking with my mother. And a young boy is pushing an empty tire of a car. They are pushing it, playing with it, because boys play with tires, they play with everything they get their hands on. And as they do that, one of the boys pushed the tire, it hit my bones, my leg. I fell to the ground, I started crying. I was 7 years old. My mother was trying to smack me and think I'm whining, because she perceived me as a whiner, which is very common sometimes. When your children are crying, they're not whining, they need help. So then my mother said, okay, I'll take you to the hospital. Remember, I'm 7. I only hear stories about doctors, because you don't go back in the 1960s, in the 69s, you didn't really see a doctor until something is really shattered. For most of us, you only saw a nurse who gave you a shot, the injections, the vaccines, the BCGs, which was very painful on my arm here. So I want to tell you this story so quickly. So it is then that my mother took me to a central hospital. They did an x-ray. I'm 7, I'm curious as can be. I'm like, oh, where are they taking me? What's this man in a white coat doing to me? I didn't know anything about all that. So as I was taken to the main central hospital, I had an x-ray done on my leg. They said I had a fracture, and they wrote a little piece of paper which says a hairline fracture or green stick fracture. Like, what's green stick? Is that a stick from the tree? And then I found out that it's a fracture on my leg. They said they'll put a cast on. They put a cast on. And I was with this cast for a couple months. But I was curious. I'm like, so if this is a fracture in my leg, and I'm wearing this cast on, and I'm walking in crutches, who's healing it? How in the world is this going to come together? Again, the energy healing. So I became so curious that even to this day, there's something wrong with me. I'm wondering what's going on in the inside, because there's always something going on in the inside. So it is in my curiosity that I remained connected with the health message which God gave to us in the book of Genesis, which God gave to her servant, Ellen G. White. So don't quit eating meat or anything because of me, but I'm telling you how I became curious. I want to tell you the story of the fracture. And I also want to tell you how my fractured leg became my crutch for a long time. So my fracture healed, and I was given a piece of paper by the doctor. She should never do athletics. She should not do athletics because her bones are still healing. So when they took the cast off, they gave me a piece of paper that I cannot run, I should not run. And I'm telling you this for a reason. That was a beautiful masterpiece. And some of you who went to high school with me know this. So my little paper was in my hand for a long, long time. When it was time for athletics, I would take it out of my bag and say, I cannot run because I once broke a bone. I was 13, I was 14, and I never did athletics. I still had my paper. I held it so dear to me that athletics skipped me because I had a crutch. And I tell you this because some people who I deal with every day have crutches and they don't even know they have a crutch. So it was one day when one of my teachers who was passionate about athletics wanted me to run, but I avoided running the rest of my life. Instead, I did a shot put, the javelin. My schoolmates will tell you this from 34 years ago when I was in high school. I continued to have a crutch. One day, this teacher decided he wants to make me run, and he followed me with a stick, made me run. I ran fast enough that he wouldn't catch me. And he said, so you can run. That's when my eyes started to open. I said, oh, so my bones are not really broken anymore. And I tell you this because healing is part of the health message. And I'm going to tell you about the crutch. So one day, a few years ago, I was presenting in Orlando at the Florida Physical Therapy Association. I was going to be one of the presenters of a workshop to the physical therapists who were coming for the annual conference. It was a spring conference, I believe, or summer conference. I was presenting of vestibular dysfunction, dizziness. So one of the ladies who was assigned to help me with my accommodation, because they were paying for my accommodation as a presenter, called me. At that time, I was working as a educator for one of the colleges. He said, ma'am, are you going to join the 5K in the morning? I said, 5K? No, not me. She said, yes. Are you going to join the 5K? It's in the morning. I said, sweetheart, I don't run. She said, but you can walk. God sent me a message through this lady so much. I said, she's right. She said, ma'am, doc, I have a few months. You could probably prepare and improve your speed. I said, you're right. It was at that moment I realized that the crutch which I got from this age of 7 had kept me from running the rest of my life. So yours truly put a pair of sneakers on and started running, walking first, running. I started running when I was in my 40s, and I did the 5K. And I've done several 5Ks before. They might not be in the newspaper, but I have the medals. I'll show you one day. So I realized, oh, so it is you, God, who sent a messenger who told me that I had to start somewhere. So I started somewhere. I even did a 5K here locally where I motivated other people. It's on my Facebook page there, you can see it. But I share this with you because the health message, it's about healing. It's about healing broken wounds. Broken wounds which might exist or might not exist. Mine was no longer existing, but it was a crutch. Someone else's broken wound is probably no longer existing, but it's a scar. So the health message restores energy. Energy at cellular level, so healing can start taking place. Energy, mental energy, so people can make sound decisions. Just like I had to make a decision that I will give it a try. I do the 5K, and I did it. I think I have the medal with me. I'll take a picture and I'll share with you all the ones I have. To this day, they hang in my car. All the 5Ks I participated in. The broken bone was now history. So health message restores and heals. So when we talk about the body temple, we are talking about all the body parts which make the body, all the body functions which comprise human life. And so I share this story with passion because even I was once wounded, traumatized by things of the past, and held on to a crutch and tried never to let go. And so I share this with passion because not every message is for everyone, but there is a message for someone. So on this Holy Sabbath day, I share this with the passion because I know people who've come through my services, who've been healed because they were able to pinpoint to the scar. They were able to pinpoint to the energy suckers in their life, to where their energy is being drawn, and they were able to restore the heat energy, mechanical energy, electrical energy, electromagnetic energy, and all the energies, chemical energy as well, at cellular level, at tissue level, at organ level, and at system level. So when we pray to our God, He hears and heals us, but we are left with the responsibility to know the health message, to embrace the health message, to like it or not like it, to share it whether we like it or not. So I want to end this on a very, very high note in saying, you are energy. You are a bundle of energy. You are living matter. Your body is made up of components of cells which have intelligence which came from God. I want to say this. There are many people who say, oh, I will go to church to pray, and I'll go to my doctor for care. But what I do in between does not connect the dots. I'm here to tell you the good news. There's a direct connection between when I go to church and when I go to my doctor, because it is my whole body going to church. It is also my whole body going to the doctor. And so this body, which was fearfully and wonderfully made, was made with a maker who has a solution. And that solution is the health message. So we can continue to say this. When we acknowledge that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are acknowledging that we have energy and that our bodies is influenced by energy from the inside and energy from the outside. It is my hope and prayer on this Sabbath day that you are blessed with this message. The health message is for you. It should be your friend. You should know it. You should like it. You should share it. You should embrace it. I am a product of a health message, which God has restored me. I can talk about emotional trauma. I could talk about psychological trauma. I could talk about mental, physical trauma. I just told you I had a broken bone, which healed in time. I had to have a cast for a while, but I no longer carry that cast with me or wear it. So I say this with a passion because the body temple, this series will help you come to terms with the reality of your health and well-being. And most people say, if we don't find time for wellness, we will find time for sickness. And I want to say this, as I share the health message with you all every time, I am more and more convinced that there's more and more people who need to hear this. Please like, share, subscribe this video, because you'll be the very person who will help someone else understand that there is a better way to live this life and that there are solutions which exist to restore whole health. Thank you so much for watching. And on this Holy Sabbath day, I am going to pray for you, with understanding. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. Thank you for this moment in time when you can restore health, when you can bring to us the understanding that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, when you can bring to us an understanding that inside our bodies is energy, energy which is heat, chemical, mechanical, electrical, and light energy, and that it is the combination of these energies which heals us, which keeps us going and functioning. Father, thank you for the word you gave to Dr. Nancy and Dwayne McHenry, that indeed 20% of the energy comes from the atmosphere. They shared this, and 80%, 20% is from our food, and 80% is the environment. And in order for the body to process the energy from the environment, it needs a good digestion. Lord, may you restore healing. May you bring your people to a greater understanding of what the health message is and what is not. To God be the glory. For you, God, have given the Adventist Church a powerful message, the health message. And Lord, we know that this health message has been packaged differently by different people. I thank you, God, for allowing me this opportunity to share a word, to share a message, or help people connect how fearfully and wonderfully made we are. For fearfully and wonderfully made we are indeed. May you heal someone. May you bring someone to a place of peace, a place of understanding that you've left us with the choice to choose what is right and what is wrong. Lord, help us to exercise our choices accordingly. Be with us, oh Lord, we pray. In Jesus' holy name, amen and amen.